Dr. Duke, and this is Constitution Corner. And on our Constitution Corner segment, we don't just talk about the Constitution or what's in it or how the Founding Fathers were thinking when they wrote it. We also talk about how the Constitution has impacted and been handed down to us for hundreds of years. And one of the things I want to talk about today is just why is it that the Constitution is so offensive to progressive leftists? Why do leftist academics and politicians and journalists and Hollywood people, why are they so angry about the Constitution? Well, the first answer to that is because they haven't read it. They don't know it. They don't understand it. They don't understand anything about the colonial period. They don't understand anything about the mindset of the founders. This is, of course, a calculated thing. We have stopped teaching these things to our kids. Progressivism can't exist if it ties itself to history. In fact, the very word progressive seems to promote the idea that we're leaving the past behind and moving forward. And the problem with that is, and the problem with progressive education, is if you don't know, this is a bit of a cliche, if you don't know where you've been, you have no idea where you're going. One of the main reasons that the Constitution is under fire from the left is A, they just don't understand it. But B, another important reason they don't understand it is because of who wrote it. Think about the degree to which identity politics has dominated the Democrat Party, how all the progressive left actually has is identity politics. You're good if you're a minority, you're bad if you're not. If you're a cisgendered, as they say, white male, you're responsible for all the evils of the world. If you're anybody else, you're a victim. If you're heteronormative and believe in sex between a man and a woman, you're an oppressor. And if you're transgender or gay or some other corresponding alternative gender, oh, then you're a victim. This is where we are now. And you think about identity politics is not even thinking anymore. It's not about logic. It's not about reason. It's not about argument. We now judge, the progressive left actually now judges people on their superficial characteristics, race, class, gender. In other words, 50 years ago, liberal Democrats were fighting for civil rights and were fighting for the idea that the color, Martin Luther King, that the color of our skin should not matter. Those same Democrats are now progressive leftists, and they're arguing that the only thing that matters when we deal with people, groups, and individuals is their superficial characteristics. What is your race? That decides whether we like you or not. What's your gender? That decides whether or not we consider you worthy of our time and attention or not. So, in other words, we've gone back to pre-Jim Crow with the progressive left in basing everything they do on the superficial characteristics of race, class, and gender. It is remarkable. And keep in mind that the Founding Fathers were all to a man, white and male, overwhelmingly Christian. We have no evidence that any of them were anything but heterosexual men. So by definition, the progressive left has to hate the Founding Fathers, and it has to hate the document that they wrote. And finally, the biggest problem I think we have is a problem with history. To the progressive left, history is the problem. Remember, the socialists didn't like this either. It was the socialists that really first gave us concerted revisionist history. Go back through history and not study it, but rewrite it. Rewrite history to conform with our values today. Try to prove to people that the history of the world prior to the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution or the 1933 accession of the National Socialist Party, the Nazis in Germany, that all history prior to the rise of socialism or socialist movements was actually socialist history. We just didn't know it. To the progressive left, history has to either be ignored or completely rewritten from our modern day perspectives. And that's what makes it so dangerous. We're now arguing, and we're going back through history, and any significant figure from history who wasn't gay but didn't marry, we're going to out them as gay. We see this happening now on college campuses. Famous poets, right? Abraham Lincoln, now we say, some professors are arguing, must have been gay because when he was out stumping throughout Kentucky, when he was out stumping for political jobs, he stayed in inns where men shared beds, which was the cultural norm back then. That proves that before Lincoln got married, he must have had homosexual tendencies. The progressive left rewrites history to conform. The problem with the Constitution is there's no way to rewrite it so that by reading it, you agree with a leftist agenda. It's a very short document. We have one of the shortest founding documents in the history of the world. That's by design. Anyone can read it. Anyone can understand it. Once you read it and understand it, you know that what the socialists are telling you about human nature, about government, about markets, about economies is bogus. It doesn't hold up. It is the Constitution's very brevity and simplicity that makes it the enemy historically of progressive leftists. And so they're not going to let your kids read it. They're not going to expose your kids to the world that produced it. They're going to simply rewrite it. They're going to make it longer. They're going to make it more complicated, and they're going to dismiss it that way. This is why the Constitution is under assault. That same document we swear our oaths when we take public office is being attacked by those so-called public servants. We have to find a way to do better and get the actual living, breathing Constitution into the hands of America and American kids. That's the way to do it.